We're going to continue on with growth and development and concerning self-concept. And when you think of self-concept, it is a conscious awareness of a variety of self-perceptions. So that concerns things such as one's own abilities, their values, their self-ideals, expectations, and idea of self in relation to others. Um, each small success increases a child's self-image, so we need to encourage positive self-concepts in our children so that they have self-confidence and they are happy. Primary caregivers continue to exert influence on children's self-evaluation because children do value the opinions of peers, teachers, and so we can provide valuable input during middle childhood. And we want to emphasize skill building and broaden social relationships. And when you think about children, just remember that they are always in the process of self-evaluation. So we do want to reinforce positive self-evaluation and self-image. With body image, the sudden growth that takes place in early adolescence creates feelings of confusions for adolescents. So some might choose to hide their body, or others might choose to advertise it. They continually compare themselves to everyone else. And so, as you can see, when it talks about blemishes and defects, when they have them, say a zit or a pimple or whatever, they typically blow that out of proportion and they consider that threatening to their body image, whether it is or not. Their self-actualization, self-concept is that it is. The body image established during adolescence is the one that individuals will retain throughout their life. So that's why it's really important to put a positive aspect on self-concept and body image. As children get older, self-concept will gradually become more individualized as they become more distinct from others. Typically, teenagers will describe themselves in terms of similarities with their peers, but as they continue to advance and advance into young people, they will gradually describe themselves in special characteristics of themselves and what makes them different from everyone else and how they are unique. Responses to puberty are going to differ depending on the stage of development. Typically, adolescents are going to be interested in the anatomy, physiology, and function of their sexual organs. Boys typically will find some of those changes puzzling, embarrassing. They might find it difficult to discuss feelings with their parents, and so then they turn to their friends and seek information or guidance from their friends. Same with girls. They find that the rapid changes kind of cause them concern. Some girls perceive the increase in weight as associated with them being fat, and so they might indulge in fad diets. They might turn to anorexia, bulimia. Typically, their first menses will be very distressing and frightening to them. You can see by the slide they want to have the perfect body, and so we might find some adverse responses to puberty depending on where they are at in their adolescence. With social development, this goes across the board. Attachment, we need to look at reactive attachment disorder, separation anxiety, stranger fear. When you're looking at kids, play is a major socializing agent, provides great stimulation that they need to learn and how they interact with the environment. For attachment, two components of cognitive development are going to be required for attachment, and those are going to be the ability to discriminate the mother from individuals, and then secondly, the achievement of objects' permanence, and so that's the rattle behind their back. This information is on page 961 of your text. Crying is going to be a biologic sign that conveys messages of urgency, signals their distress, so it might mean they're hungry, they have a dirty diaper, those kinds of things. Typically that crying will change into syllabus and words, so as they continue to advance in their development, we will also see language development. When we look at play in the toddler area, toddlers start to interact with people, and people become more important. When they were infants, they typically had solitary play. Now the toddler progresses to parallel play, where they might play alongside of someone, but they're not exactly playing with them. Imitation is a very distinguishing characteristic of play during toddler years. It enriches the child's opportunity to engage in fantasy. We don't really see too much emphasis on gender stereotype toys. So, boys and girls will both play with dolls and trucks and cooking utensils, dress up clothes, those kinds of things. Tactile stimulation is going to be very important. Preschoolers begin to enjoy associative play, where they'll play in a group that people are playing similar activities, but there's really no rigid organization. There's no rules. Everybody just plays, and they're working on their mental development. Sorry about the loud buzzing noise. As children progress through into the school age, this is on page 1083. Typically, as they enter school age, we're looking more towards rules. They want to acquire mastery over themselves and their environment and others. So when there's rules, when there's teams, we look at more powerful and more control attainment. And then with quiet games and activities, that's learning self-control. And then typically they will have some ego mastery as they extend out from the school age time. Back to toddlers. I'm sorry, I'm a little out of order here. With toddlers, we see them differentiating themselves from their mother. So we will see the child express his or her individual characteristics. We start to see toddlers learning to tolerate periods of separation, and that's going to be very important in their development. It's necessary for parents to leave their children so that that separation will allow parents to regain their energy, regain their patience, and then help minimize tendencies to direct their irritations, their frustrations, their angers, those types of things towards their kids. And so we really want to encourage parents that they do need some time away from their children as well. When you're looking at separation and you're considering kids in separation, it's important for them to overcome stranger anxiety. And I'm talking strangers as far as like babysitters, daycares, those kinds of things. Kids still need security from familiar objects, so like blankets, stuffed animals, toys, those kinds of things. Play therapy is going to be very beneficial when they're trying to work through fears. It will also help expand fantasies and try to help alleviate some of that anxiety that's associated with separation. As toddlers gain their skills for independence, we see them becoming more strong-willed. They should, at this time, be able to feed themselves, hopefully dressing and undressing themselves, maybe not necessarily tying shoes, but doing some of those gross motor skills independently. Becoming self-ascertained is still going to be a major theme during the preschool age time. They're really trying to seek out autonomy. They are able to verbalize their request for independence, and so you kind of see that they don't really want to obey all the time, but they do typically know their boundaries. By the end of early childhood, they begin to question if mom or dad is right or wrong. They compare what they're doing with their peer group and other authority figures. So we might see them challenging their code of conduct and what's right and wrong as far as the family and the culture goes. As we go into school age, one of the most important socializing agents in the school age year is going to be our peer group. So they look toward their parents, however, but they look more towards schools, the peer groups, and those types of things to gain most of their information. Peer groups, as you know, have cultures of their own, so they will have secrets, maybe codes. it helps them to sort of detach from the adults. And then through peer relationships, children are going to learn how to deal with dominance, how to deal with hostility, maybe how to relate to other people in authority, so the teachers, principals, coaches, and then they learn to explore ideas of the physical environment. If the school-age child lacks relationships with peers, typically then that's when we're going to see bullying come into play. And we do provide lots of education to kids about bullying. The school-age child does seek independence, but they're really not quite ready to give mom or dad up yet. So they continue to look for their parents' support. Adolescents really must free themselves from family domination. So during the time of adolescence, they gain more independence. There's lots of ambivalence. We see lots of fighting, arguing, adolescents not listening to their parents. And we see this because they want to grow up and they want to be free of those restraints, but still they're not quite ready for the independence. But we do see intense sociability, so we see them wanting to be very social, but then when they're alone, they have really great periods of loneliness and detachment. It's important for adolescents to be part of a peer group. They will start to influence each other, and sex roles are strongly influenced by peer relationships. So we do see if their friends are experimenting with sex, we see them also experimenting with sex to try to be part of that. With relationship with parents, we see that changing from protection to dependency. There's lots of turmoil. We see adolescents feeling that they're immortal, that they are exempt from any of the consequences that their actions or their risk-taking behavior may cause. It's used, we see it as parents as being very negative. However, as they develop and mature during this period of life, it's really important for the developmental functioning. We see that as far as going on into adulthood, it helps give adolescents the courage to separate from their parents and become independent when it's time. And then part of the emancipation involves developing social relationships, and people outside of the family that they want to identify with will help them sort of identify their own personal role in society. Their relationship with others, really the major thing that you need to be cognizant of is that peers really need to be accepted by their friends. They need to have close friends, and then the very select close friends offer secure love, they offer support and help for interpersonal maturation. So it is very important to have best friends. The best friends are going to be the big support system for this peer group. The peer group has an intense influence on adolescent self-evaluation and behavior, and so they typically try to gain acceptance by a group, but the best friend group really is going to be their best audience. They're going to be the ones that they listen to, and it helps link the progress towards those intimate relationships that are going to develop a little later in life. Their interests in activities, typically what we see them moving from family-centered to more peer-centered. If the adolescent does work, then they need to consider working no more than 20 hours a week while in school. And when you think about it, time management, the adolescent is really involved in a lot of things. So school, activities after school, before school, jobs, family, friends. So it's really difficult for them to juggle all those activities. So time management might be a big concern, and they're typically going to put friends and socializing and fun before school. So we need to kind of change that focus and get them more focused back into school.